Okay, 'cause don't you know you gotta hold on to what you've got. It don't make no difference you're a Wookiee or not. I'm Han Bon Jovi, and that's
thanks for tuning in. This is Matt Santos of The
The
Mile High Show. You're
famous
listening to episode number 196. Now, we had a little bit of a hiatus. I've been on the road doing a lot of work outside of town. That has kept me away from the microphones a little bit. I was able to record this episode, number, again, 196, while on the road at the House of Comedy, Arizona. That's Rick Bronson's House of Comedy, Arizona in North Phoenix, with Kevin Bennett, the French accent, a very, very funny and very unique individual, comic and musician. He was in town, touring through the Southwest, actually all over. I think he was headed to Colorado next, or maybe California, I forget, but he's all over the road, touring in his RV. You'll hear a little bit about that and what brought him to the RV life. You may know him from America's Got Talent or any number of comedy clubs that he has been hitting in the last few years. I got a chance to meet him earlier this year in Flagstaff at the Big Pine Comedy Festival, and didn't actually get to see him perform. Talked to him off stage a few times, but like I said, didn't get a chance to see him perform because that festival is kind of a madhouse, just so much going on. And I missed a lot of the acts that were there, a lot of the comics that were there, but I was able to see him at House of Comedy. He was there featuring for my good friend Steve Simone. AwesomeSteve.com is where you can find out information on Steve and his tours and everything that was going on. I don't know if he's going to run it, but Steve and I recorded an episode, not of the Mile High Show, but of the Good Times podcast, Steve's own podcast, available everywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, everywhere. So I don't know if he's going to run it because I am not used to being on that end of the interview cycle, and I've listened to little cuts and pieces of it, and it's true. I'm a blabbering idiot, especially when it's not my microphone. So I did have a good time hanging out with Steve and Kevin, as well as Gene Moore, who was the host for that whole weekend. But French accent Kevin Bennett is our guest today. Funny guy, very funny guy, interesting guy, theater background, and just a really interesting guy. The bumpers, the intro and outro of this episode will be Kevin on stage as French accent. We'll put a couple of clips on there. I'm not sure which ones, but enjoy those. You can check him out. Oh, look in the show notes. I forget exactly where they are, but under The French Accent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram, he is kevin.bennett.969, and pianoman69 on Twitter. So links are right there in the show notes. So check him out. Check out his YouTube clips. He's got links to those on his Facebook page. Again, The French Accent on Facebook. Funny guy, very funny and unique guy. Now, before we get into the episode, we want to remind you to utilize that Amazon link at milehighshow.com to help us support the show, help us get down to places like Phoenix and farther, so that we can bring you interviews like this one. Coming up in the near future, we're going to be recording with old friends of the show, Leslie Earl Lyman and Darren Mahoney, as well as a past guest, Mr. Jim Sobo, to talk about the Howling Coyote Tour. He's been on the show, so has Les and Darren. All those back episodes are available at milehighshow.com, including other links for you to support the show, right there at the Support the Show link, with freebie stuff like reviews, ratings that always help boost our visibility, a PayPal button where you can actually donate a buck. Donate $2 if you'd like. It'll help us. Or more. If you want more, that's fine. You can also get some information on how to be a sponsor of the show. You can subscribe. You can use that Amazon link. You can use the Audible link. You can use our various ways to support the show right there at supporttheshow@milehighshow.com. Now, who else we got lined up? I forget. We've got some fun stuff in the works. Just a moment before we head into our interview with or our chat with Kevin Bennett. The Prescott area this past week lost a beacon for the arts in the way of my good friend, Mr. Ken Byers. He passed away after battling cancer for some time. Ken Byers was the program director for Arizona Hometown Radio Group, where I also host a periodic show, talk radio show, on the family that hosts KQ&A. That's where I am, KQ&A Talk Radio. KPPV, their top 40 station, where Ken had been the longtime host of the Morning Mix, morning drive time show. KDDL, Cattle Country, is also part of that family. Jack FM, just a bunch. They got a bunch of stations. But the backbone of that station was Ken Byers, and he was a big supporter of the arts, of local music, of local artists and entertainers, and just the general scene in and around Prescott. He was often the host and the MC of big community events, a lot of the fundraisers for the Chambers of Commerce and the Elks Theater, and a ton of stuff. And he was a good friend. I'm gonna miss you, Ken, and his family, Shannon, and his daughter. They will need the support of the community. Nick Canuel, again, another former guest of the Mile High Show, will be taking over the slot of Ken's Morning Mix show. But if you didn't know Ken, you missed out, because he was a huge supporter of artists and musicians and entertainers in and around the Prescott area, and he will be missed. We are glad he is no longer feeling the pain that he has been enduring for so long. When I first started hosting talk radio locally, Ken was the instrument in which I got in there. He had talked to me. We had talked to various entities at the station about me filling in as a news correspondent on air. Didn't come about. We talked about it several times over the years with my connection to local media, and Ken was a big force in my corner to get that done. And like I said, that didn't come about. But when it did come up that I would host for a local municipality, Ken was always there with his support, giving me tips on how to be better on the mic for the radio station for KQ&A. He was always sending me messages, usually in the middle of the night, because we both have weird hours. And he would send me words of encouragement and suggestions and hints and tips to help me in my broadcast career. And then when I went forward with the podcast, he was one that we wanted to get on, and it just never worked out. Like I said, he would hit the station usually at about 4 or 5 in the morning, and would wrap up early afternoon, and often had evening stuff going on. So he was a busy guy. We talked about it. We set up a couple things, just didn't work out, and I regret that, because I would have liked to have Ken on the show, on the podcast. He was always encouraging me and helping me reach out for better ways to be a better interviewer, and I thank him for that. So that is my thoughts on Mr. Ken Byers. He will be missed. So enjoy our conversation with Mr. Kevin Bennett, the French accent, and let's dedicate this one to Ken, who no doubt could have gone through and given me tips on how to make this interview even better than it was. Mr. French accent, Kevin
Yes,
Bennett.
sir, that's me.
Where can people find you? Where can they see your clips? Where can they follow your tweets, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff?
All righty, well, kevin.bennett.969 is my Instagram. That's kevin.bennett.969. And it's
2 N's, 2 T's?
Yes, sir, you got it. 2 of everything but the B. And Twitter is French accent at pianoman69. And then I've got a Facebook page. Just stick in Kevin Bennett or look up French accent. Look for a picture of me with the accordion.
I'll stick links to all that in the show notes. So
beautiful, thank you. And then let's see. On YouTube, I do have a few pages. I've got my main channel, which has got a 40-minute clean set and a 70-minute adult set and a bunch of little things, a few little videos here and there. I've got 2 albums out. Between Dystopias is only available on SoundCloud. The previous publisher of it only gave me a year. Yeah. But you can find Weather Local. Just Google Weather Local Kevin Bennett. You can listen to it on YouTube, or you can download it. It's on Spotify, it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes. Just kind of a trippy, it's a music thing, it's not comedy. And then I got a book out called Amphibian. It's a sci-fi, it's like the next step in Blade Runner, if you will. You know, do androids dream of electric sheep? Fine, now do they have a soul? So that was the next, it's a little goofy adventure thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I've got out there right now. I had another book, but the publisher fell through. That's The Thief and the Sacrifice. And then comedy, I need to get a comedy album out, but I haven't released it yet.
Well, we got some content for you. We've got some...
Merci
what were you
beaucoup.
doing, 20s?
Yeah.
20-minute sets here at the House of Comedy AZ, Rick Bronson's House of Comedy, where we're recording right now.
Oh, man, it's great.
Check them out. It is such a great club, not just for the feel of it and the hang, but the staff here has just been dynamite, because I am not... I don't creep around well, and I've been given basically free reign to do what I was doing this weekend.
Yeah, they've treated you quite well.
Yeah, it's been really nice, and we got to hang out with a couple of staff folks last night too.
Oh, no, yeah, we did. Yeah, it's actually been quite fun. The staff's nice. We've had good entertainers. The openers that have come through the guest sets, they've been fun as well. Audiences have been great. Even the small audience, we had a lot of fun with. And
it's been a great time. And then Steve Simone, who's about 15, 20 feet behind you, recording another podcast. I was trying to sit down with him to record one of mine. We got a chance to record his Good Times podcast.
Oh, good.
It's the first time I've ever been a guest on it. Well, no, I take that back. A couple of buddies of mine up in Prescott have some podcasts that I've sat in with, but not really as a guest. We just kind of were covering some topics, but he did a straight interview with me.
Oh, cool.
I've never been on that side before.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's kind of odd. I work with media, so, I've interviewed thousands of people over the years for print media.
Yeah.
And then my podcast, my radio show and stuff, but I've never been on the other side. And all I can think of was when we press stop that was horrible. No, it was fine. I go, you're not going to use that, are you? He's, oh, yeah, it was great. It just wasn't me,
I feel you. Well, I don't know. Podcasts are nice because they let you sort of see people over an hour or two, whatever social filter you put on yourself sort of gets... it sort of goes by the wayside and your real thoughts come out, I think. Yeah. And then when you're working or working out or driving or somewhere, it's nice to have something to listen to.
Keep you company.
Yeah. Here's Gene Moore. He's our host.
Hey, Gene, what's your Twitter and Instagram stuff? Here, wait, come on. Here.
Gene Moore at Free. Gene Moore at Free on Twitter. That's my Twitter. I don't know how to use social media. Twitter is what I use for my resist political stuff. And then Facebook is for recipes and shows. And then Instagram is where I'm glamorous. So.
And that's Gene.
Yeah. Thank you. How are you guys? I love you.
Good. How are you doing?
I feel good. I hope you had a good day. I love you. Bye.
You're going to run away. He does not, for a performer, a guy who makes a name for himself on stage, does not like to have people look at him on stage, take his picture, or record him. That's good. Gene's been the host this weekend, and man, he's just a ball to hang with.
Yeah, he's a
nice
nice guy.
Fun.
Yeah.
Kevin, let's get back to you now that we've straightened. I'm going to change my show's the Mile High Show because Prescott's 52.
Oh, nice,
feet,
nice.
I was really surprised when because I had no idea what to name it, and then I realized before I send the RSS to iTunes, I go, I need a name. I had no idea what to call it. 4 years ago. So, Mile High Up, we're just going to be covering stuff in the area, entertainment. Mile High, that's got to be taken by Denver. Wasn't.
What?
I was so surprised.
You nailed it. You got it. You stole it. Snuck in under there.
No, now I'm just waiting for somebody in Denver to want to buy it from me, and I can give this whole thing up.
Nice, yeah, because that's like they coined that term.
Yeah.
They ought to have more of it. That's funny that they're in a Mile High podcast.
So what? You're originally Wyoming?
Yeah,
a Wyoming kid. That's where you were born?
Yeah, I was born in Gillette, Wyoming, in the late 80s.
What's Gillette? Describe
Gillette is it's a blue-collar town in the northeast of the state, an hour west of the Devil's Tower National Park.
That's the mashed potatoes from,
Close Encounters. Yeah, about 2 hours west of Mount Rushmore. And it's 2 hours, 140 miles, but you drive 75 to 80. Yeah. So that's how we reckon distance in that part of the country. And it's there's a lot of people in coal bed methane. There's a lot of people in the roughnecks in the oil industry, and there's a lot of coal mining.
Coal bed, is that the fracking?
No, I'm not sure. I don't believe it is though. What they found is there's methane deposits that's in certain coal seams or water bodies that they're in the coal. I don't know exactly how it works. I know coal. I understand.
They're making energy.
Yeah,
they're keeping our lights
there's fracking somewhere, but I've always heard those terms used not interchangeably but separate. So
gotcha.
I haven't looked into it. It might be, but I don't think it is. I think they're separate things. But I worked in the coal mine to pay for college. I got a BA in theater, and I worked there for 8 months. But I did the math on it. It was about a year's worth of man hours. And
really?
And I paid off the college
money
debt.
Good.
Yeah.
Money good.
Yeah, it was $5,000 a month, but I was doing overtime.
Yeah.
So right out of school, $5,000 a month.
What were you doing?
You'd take a truck, big old Tonka truck, those dump trucks, and they're about the size. They're about 30 feet long, about 20 feet high, about 30 feet wide. They're just a big old square kind of rectangle little caterpillar, and you'd take that and you'd drive it into the pit, which is a huge open quarry, about size of several football fields. Mm-hmm. It's like somebody dug a football stadium into the ground, and you're driving down there and you go under the shovel and they take 3 to 4 dumps on you of coal, and that fills you up to where you're about 1.2 million pounds fully loaded. That's the truck and the coal together. And then you drive your butt up out of the pit, dump it down a grate, and the grate takes it to a conveyor belt, and that puts it in a silo and bops it onto a train.
Man.
And so you do...
So you were driving the Tonkas.
Yeah, I was doing that. You just drive in a circle 12 hours a day, basically.
Though that equipment, I'm familiar with a little bit. My dad worked for Caterpillar Tractor for close to 40 years. A shipping depot. So we had the pictures and the calendars and all that stuff. But here in this part of the state, in this state, up near me, not too far from Prescott, is Baghdad, which is a mine town.
Okay.
And down at the southern end, Morenci, Bisbee, Globe, all that is also mining copper and other things. So
those are usually open. They call them strip mines, but it's an open pit mine usually.
But the equipment, the trucks you're talking about, they're familiar to this part of the state.
Yeah.
So, but that's not easy work.
Well, it is and it isn't. You don't really have a boss riding herd on you, but you do have a dispatcher in the radio. It's really loud. You got to put in earphones, but you can listen to music or comedy as loud as you want. Yeah. And yet, a lot of people end up smoking a lot out there.
Gotcha.
Cigarettes, because you can't. They drug test you.
But for boredom.
Well, it keeps you awake. And you do 12-hour shifts, and it's about an hour on top of that. Drive out, drive back, get there early to milk the clock. So I was pulling in something like, I think 1 week I got closer to 90 hours or something. I can't remember how that broke down. But I was doing that right out of college in 2008, and by the grace of God, I paid off my college loan. Well, my loans and what I had owed the year I graduated. And
so you came out of college debt-free.
Within 5 months. Well, let's see. I got out in March. I was debt free by October of 2008.
I got buddies of mine in their 40s that are still paying off college.
Yeah, it was a godsend. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So I just I turned 21 April of 2008, and March I graduated because at Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, where I got my BA in theater. They didn't do traditional class structure. They would do one course for a month. It would be 3.5 weeks, and you'd do 4 hours of coursework a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, just concentrate on one, and you'd get the same as you'd have in a semester. And so they have 9 classes like that for a year. In 4, that's 36 courses.
So really high concentrate.
Yeah.
Get the beef of it out.
And it's the same as a regular BA and you can do elective stuff as well. So I got all my stuff done 2 months early, and I wasn't about to spend another $4,000 a month just farting around in college. So I didn't even go to the graduation ceremony. I had to mail my diploma. I didn't care. So I got out of there, and I was working at the mines by May, June, July, August, September, October. I was done, debt-free. I moved down to Colorado, and I had a choice at that point. It was heads I go down to Colorado and look for stand-up because I got a BA in theater. I was going to be an actor,
Yeah.
which thank God I was disabused of that notion in the fullness of time, because those actors, oh my goodness, I didn't know any better. You know, I was just 21. So as heads, I'd go down to Fort Collins because I had a place I could stay and find a job. Tails, they weren't going to let me stay on at the mine I was at because I was hired on technically as a summer intern.
Gotcha. So it was a temp position.
Yeah, it was a
already.
temp, but I worked hard. I got from coal to dirt, which is overburden removal, which is harder work, more dangerous, and I was doing good at that. And I thought, you know, now that I can do these two skills, I'm more hireable than somebody they have to train all over again.
Yeah.
Turns out I was wrong because I'm a single white dude. I wasn't pregnant. I wasn't from another country. I didn't have a family. And these are the people that filled the positions that were open, not me. So I wasn't able to. I had a choice. I could either try and find another mine in town, because it is a bit of a good old boys club in the sense that once you've been in, you're more likely to be able to get in at another mine. You know, somebody will have trouble at this mine, get in a fight, you know, then get hired on at this mine where those kind of people are more likely to hang out. Then they'll have trouble here and go to that mine, and it's just
roustabout.
Yeah, and that's just sort of the mining. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was that I was going to do that, and I was going to save up $10,000 and go to LA. That was one plan. The other one was go down to Fort Collins, Colorado, find somewhere to live, and try and do comedy or music or something, because I knew there'd be more art down there than in Wyoming. So I prayed over a coin and flipped it. And I don't remember which one I said was which, but it ended up I went down to Colorado in 2008.
Gotcha.
And I looked for comedy for about 2 weeks, and I couldn't find it, and I gave up. And I didn't look again for 3 years when I got a DWAI after a breakup. And then I found it in February of 2011 when I didn't have a license. I was riding a bike 4 miles to a bus stop at 4 in the morning so I could catch it down to Boulder to work at IBM. I was in the pit of my despair, and my friends were like, yeah, man, there's one like right down the street from where you live. Because comics can't market, you know, especially when you're new at it. They don't know how to market. They don't know how to get an open mic out there. There's like 50 people in a town of 100,000 that know, you know, or that could remember. They've seen it maybe because they were an audience member walking in, but they're not going to remember where they were. Yeah. So finally I found it, and I went in there and I watched them. And I was like, I can do this. And I came back the next week with a little material, and they put me on a showcase at another one in town. And so in 2000,
in Fort Collins?
Yeah, in Fort Collins in 2011. It was Hodie's Half Note and the East Coast. And I think they might still both be around. I know Hodie's is. I don't know about East Coast.
That's a cool little town.
It is. It's really nice.
Only once.
It's a lot like Flagstaff, but it's a little larger. And it's more flat. That's about, but it's, I like Fort Collins a lot.
We were up there, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
And for, maybe not even that, 4 or 5 years, something like that. And a buddy of mine, his daughter was getting married, so we went up for the wedding. And
cool.
First time I had ever been up there.
It's really nice.
And cool little town, cool little spot.
I get a kick out of it. Yeah, I'm going back there to spend a week before I go home for the holidays because I just like being in Fort Collins and I'm going to do some Christmas shopping there and maybe see an old friend or two.
Nice.
Yeah, but
tell me about the breakup. What happened? Now, what'd you call it? A DW? What?
DWAI is a driving while ability impaired.
Okay.
So it's DUI. Basically, I think how the breakdown works because. You know, you have a legal limit, and then you have over the legal limit.
I knew what you meant, but I've never heard that coined.
Yeah, Colorado. That's the only time I've ever seen it, too. I just know that's what's on my record right now, and it's going to cost me $2,000 to get into Canada. So that's all I know.
I'm fairly certain I can't go to Canada.
Oh, yeah?
I'm pretty sure.
Well, what it is
that's a whole nother podcast.
You call them up, and you pay them $2,000. Their lawyers talk to our lawyers, and then they're like, all right, you're good to go. But it'll take 2 months. You got to fill out the paperwork. So I might do that in December.
I have no reason to go to Canada. There's some great comedy clubs up there.
Exactly.
So you do.
Yeah, that's. So I've got an impetus to do that, especially since the House of Comedy, you know, there's 2 of them
Edmonton.
up there. Yeah, Edmonton, yeah.
Edmonton and Minnesota, which, a little plug, Steve Simone, our headliner from this weekend, awesomesteve.com, will be at Edmonton next week, Minnesota House of Comedy the following week. So 3 straight weeks of Rick Bronson's House of Comedies. Go ahead. That's
check him out. He's very funny. He's very funny. He does humor that you can appreciate regardless of how old you are. There's something in it for everybody.
What are you trying to say?
It's very skilled. No. Fair enough.
Even old people like Matt like
Well,
him.
what I mean is, there's those comics who are like, they're just too infantile, and then there's those that are just too dirty, and he's neither infantile nor dirty. He's funny. He's very, very skilled, and I'm jealous.
One of the best
Quite jealous.
storytellers out there.
He's very good at it. Oh, my goodness. I look at his technique, and I wanted to do that. I was listening to Cosby out at that coal mine, and I was writing my own story bits, and they were terrible. They were just not good.
I want to get to your pre-college stuff. I want to talk
back
a
to
little
the
bit about
DWAI.
but that's what I want to let's
I won't
and what
forget.
led to the breakup?
Well, I thought I was going to get married. She thought she was going to play crotch hopscotch with any she happened to come across. We had our differences. It was a rough state of affairs. Turned out,
I've never heard that term before.
I like to rattle it off. I like to just rattle that up. Well, it turned out I'm 99% sure she was cheating on me, and I knew it in my head, but in my heart I was like, no, I'll give her a chance to come clean and fix it up,
Yeah.
And she wasn't gonna, because she was, if she dolled herself up, she was a 7 out of 10. Otherwise, she was right in the 5 category. And I was after her for a personality thing. I thought, which turned out to be a total lie. I mean, the woman's laugh was even a lie. And it was a wake-up call to me. This is 2011. I'm 31 now in 2008, so I was 23 at the time.
23, and where was she? Same age?
She was 25.
Okay.
Which isn't a
She's
big...
a cradle robber.
Yeah, well, not a big... But she had a bunch of weird tendencies, and I really learned about how women lie for... not men lie too, but there's a difference. A man's not going to wear makeup to hide a blemish. He's going to just let that zit. When makeup isn't a lie, but it is. So that sort of thing is a psychological cornerstone in a female's mind, in my opinion, and I think it leads to a lot of unnecessary deception. In my opinion, I may be wrong. I'm only 31, but I think that's what happened. Anyway, she was lying straight to my face for 6 months, and she ended up breaking up with me. And I had made a deal with God: if we made it to Christmas, I'd propose. And she didn't know about that, thank God.
So when did the breakup have? What month?
It was November of 2011.
Oh, you got close.
Yeah, I got very... was it 2010? Yeah, November 2010. It was very close. And she was just lying all the time. And anyway, so she busted it up with me. I was very depressed. And I'd been giving guys at work a ride. It was a call center I was working at. And everybody else working there was ex-cons or from a halfway house.
Yeah.
So, I was the only one who had a car. So I was giving them rides, and this one guy was like, man, you got to smoke this spice stuff, man. It's like weed, but it's not, but it gets you high. I was like, whatever, dude. No, it doesn't. It's synthetic THC.
Synthetic, yeah.
It's like it's horrible stuff. What it is it's basically chemical. It's a chemical mimic of what weed is.
Yeah.
And they spray it on sagebrush. I don't know. I was young and dumb. Anyway, so... this guy bought some at a head shop, and I tried it, and I was like, whoa. And then in my dumb brain, I was like, wow, this is legal. So I
can't be in trouble if it's legal.
Exactly. So I had a little bit of that and 1 or 2 drinks and struck out at the bar after I had been dumped. It was about a week or 2 after I'd been dumped. And I was driving home, and there was a McDonald's. It's the one on West Elizabeth. And when you're going west on that street, the sign for McDonald's happens after you should have already turned into it.
Gotcha.
And so the next turn in is the exit for the drive-through. And I've seen people I've done this 3 or 4 times sober, even though I know. I turn in because you just get on autopilot. Yeah. I've seen other people do it. It was Friday. There was a lot of traffic. My mind was on the breakup. I turned in. I was like, oh no, I'm in the wrong spot. So I tried to back out, but there was traffic, and there were cars to the right of me, and there was like 4 inches between me and them. So I just gunned it and jumped the curb and drove home, and I was frantically trying to glue the mirror that I had knocked off on another vehicle in line back to the car when 4 squad cars showed up, hauled my butt off. I spent a night in the pokey, got a DWAI. I should have gotten an attorney. I could have gotten it expunged, and it would have just cost me $10,000. Instead, it cost me $10,000, and now it's on my record, and I got to pay another $2,000 to get in college. But I got done with.
In hindsight, a broken mirror, it could have been a lot worse.
It did, yeah. Good Lord's still taking care of me. But I tell you what, I was not bright at that point, and I wasn't as messed up in terms of driving. I wasn't really that messed up. But I learned an important lesson about the authorities, And yeah, I messed up, but they treated me that night like the worst scum of the earth at the cop shop. They just treated me like I wasn't even a human being. The first time I've ever stepped out of line, and I was in a rough spot, and I complied. I was very nice with the cops. I thought if I complied and I was respectful that they would extend the courtesy, and they did not. They hit me harder with the book, and I think their reasoning with that is recidivism's high. Try and keep people from ever having a second offense by making it so hard on them the first time. Because the people who keep coming back, they're just going to keep coming back, and at that point it's just, well, they're in the system and they're always going to be. And they're going to be criminals because they can't make money within the normal system, so they have to work outside the system, so they're just part of the... They want you to a degree, I think, maybe, to get stuck in the system, because it's really hard. I had to do a MAD panel, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I had to do therapy. I had to blow into a tube every other day. I had to do urinalysis tests. I had to go to a caseworker, a therapist from the state, and I had to pay for a interlock device after 2 months or a month without a license when I was driving in January on my bicycle to go to IBM, and then I had to get an SR22 insurance, and then there was a fine on top of that, and there's multiple court dates. There was one really funny thing that happened though. When I was in court about to be, sentenced, there was this little lady in her 40s, Mrs. Hernandez or something, and there's this little old bald skinny judge looked like the head of Apple kind of guy, and he was talking to her. He says, "So what happened, Miss Hernandez?" She says, "I don't know. Every couple of years, I end up stealing something." And he says, "Well, you need to stop because you're bad at it." And that was very funny. That was quite funny. And I hadn't even started comedy, but I was like, that is very funny.
That's good.
So that whole story. And anyway, at that point, I was very depressed. I'd messed up legitimately. It cost me money. I had to change my plans. I had to reorganize my work schedule. I was caught in a trap for about 8 months, and then 2 years it took for that SR22 to come off. And I still can't go to Canada until I pay $2,000. And granted, don't do substances and drive, but the system is not just in that regard how it treats people, because it's basically looking for an excuse to get you plugged in so you're stuck for life. Most people can't pull out once they make one mistake, and that ain't right. Right. So anyway, you know what? Be careful when you drive, but at the same time, if the system does get you, know that you are getting hit by something that's out of proportion.
So, and another good rule of thumb or good suggestion is, if you need to drive from your work to your house, you can eliminate that thing by driving your house to work.
Yes.
We'll get there.
That's what I do, yeah.
We'll get there in a few minutes. We'll find out about the RV life that you're living now. But let's jump back a little bit. In Wyoming, we'll retread a little bit. What was the family life there? You got brothers, sisters?
I do. I'm the oldest of three. I've got a little sister and a little brother, and I love my parents and my family. We families have ups and downs. My parents are still together. They gave us a good upbringing, and
we've nice.
all
How
had
many years?
30 plus, I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they've been together a long time. I don't know exactly. I should, but I don't. But
decades.
Decades.
Nice.
They've given us a good upbringing, and we have fights as families, but
really,
there's
that's a foreign concept in my family because we don't speak. No.
But so we're in a good shape. I had a good upbringing.
What do your siblings do? Are they in the arts? Are they in the mines?
My little brother's bouncing around. He doesn't know what he wants to do yet. My sister.
How old is he?
He's 22.
He's got time.
Yeah, he's got time. My little sister is very talented. But she's a fart in a hot skillet. She just...
How old is she?
She's 26, I think.
Okay.
She's bouncing around a lot, and I don't know. She's figuring it out. I don't want to talk too much about her because I don't know where she's...
Gotcha.
I want to wait till she's in a stable place to sort of...
Gotcha.
Because she's smarter than I am, but at the same time, she's more emotional, and it includes her reason at times, I believe. So I think that's what happens. So the one trade-off, and it's led her to have, I've had my own difficulties in life.
Yeah.
So, but I think she's pulling. She's had a couple of nosedives. I think she's pulling out.
Very nice. Best wishes to her.
Yes.
Now, so you enter into college in theater.
Yeah.
That was your focus.
I got my BA in theater.
What was high school? Were you the theater kid? Were you a performer? Were you playing music? What was going on?
I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. When I was very young, I read all the Star Wars books, and I knew I was from Wyoming, and Luke Skywalker was a fictional character, so the only way I could be Luke Skywalker was to be an actor and get into one of them movies.
Cool.
And I looked a lot like the kid they chose for Anakin Skywalker in '99. I looked a lot like him. And so from the time I was about 9 or 10 until I graduated high school, I would do every church, Easter, Christmas play. I'd do every
Get your chops.
yeah,
huh?
every 6th grade play, every junior high production. I did everything I could. I got into speech and debate. I was on a hockey team at the same time. And by my junior year in high school, I had to choose hockey or speech and debate and theater. I chose speech and debate and theater.
Keep your teeth.
Yeah, right. I can still ice skate good. And I did hockey for another semester in college in Cornell late down the line. But so junior year, I chose speech and debate and theater, made it to National Speech and Debate 2004 in Utah, Salt Lake City. And didn't place when we got there, but we had a good old time, taking a school trip there right after we graduated. Same year, we went to New York for a week.
Oh, wow.
Our theater troupe did.
Was that the first time you'd been to the East Coast?
Yeah. So I got to see Salt Lake City and New York.
Had you been to bigger cities before?
Denver. I'd been to Billings, Denver, Jacksonville, Florida, St. Louis. Because my family.
New York
was the biggest I'd ever been to. Yeah, it was.
it.
But we just stayed on Manhattan Island and took walk-around tours for a week, so we didn't really see. We were teenagers, so we bought booze in Chinatown and snuck out at night in the park and threw centipedes at each other. That was fun. But Giuliani'd cleaned it up by then, so there weren't any hobos in Central Park. So it was all right.
Hobos.
Yeah.
Was that your?
Huh?
You got a line on about hobos?
Oh, I do. I have.
I know I heard it. This
locomotive enthusiast. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
I was almost positive.
I got a couple of them. Yeah. But no,
funny.
we had fun. We had a great time. That was a wonderful memory. My buddy Reese Jenigas, who's also a big reason I got into comedy, because he told me about Hoadies. He told me about the mics. He'd always wanted.
He was the guy that told you on the street.
Yeah, and he is. I've known him since junior high. And he'd always wanted to be a comedian, and I'd always liked it, but didn't think it was possible, so I just kind of didn't ever think about it. And then I went and looked in 2008, couldn't find it, got my DWAI. He's like, buddy, there's one at Hoadies right down the street. I'm like, you're kidding me? He's like, yeah, Bob. And he was living in Cheyenne. He wasn't even in the town at the time. He said, yeah, Bob Gaudette runs it. I was like, oh, all right, I'll go check it out. And sure enough.
Now, we don't want to give away too much because we want people to go to your social media. We want them to go to your Facebook. But more importantly, we want them to go see you when you're in their town.
Okay, well, they can also Google French accent AGT to get a little tiny taste. That's America's Got Talent. I was on America's Got Talent this year.
And we'll get to there. So we don't want to give away too much because we want them to come see you.
Fair enough.
But you do... What you do is not your standard stand-up.
Thank you.
It is hilarious. It is very unique. And you mix in not just stand-up, but music. And you told me you create music aside from, or have created aside from what you do on stage.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get from, hey, I'm going to go do an open mic, tell a few jokes, write up some material, to what you're doing on stage now? What was the transformation process? How did you decide you wanted to be French accent?
Well, there's a lot of powers in the universe that are beyond our ken. And I think the good Lord directs us in ways sometimes, because I started out, I would be a Scotsman on stage, and I like to do a character. See, the thing was, when I began, all the other comedians would stand around in wee groups talking to each other and trying to make one another laugh, and you couldn't have a real conversation with them. So I decided early on that when I did comedy, I'd go on stage and be a character utterly separate from who I am in real life, so that I could have real conversations. So I came up and I was Scotland, and they really believed I was from Scotland, because the good Lord's given me a bit of a talent when it comes to dialects, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go up there and I'd tell jokes. I love blackberries, or as I prefer to call them, wee grapes. And, people would laugh. And then I'd break out of the Scotland and be American, and they'd be like, whoa, I blew your mind.
Why'd you pick Scotland?
It's my first accent that I learned to do quite well enough to be Scotland. I saw Braveheart when I was in about 5th grade, and I was watching that.
Route.
And he's not Scotland either. But when I was also walking home from school one day as an elementary schooler, you just reminded me. Me and one kid were like, oh, well, I'm part Scottish. He's like, well, I'm part Irish. I was like, well, are you more Irish or Scottish? He said, I don't know. I said, well, do an Irish accent. And he's like, well, I'm from Ireland. I said, you sound pretty Irish. He's like, well, do a Scottish accent. Like, well, I'm from Scotland. He's like, well, you sound more Scotland. And that's how we determined it.
I thought you were going to go with too much Star Trek watching.
Oh, Scotty, that's a different kind of Scotland altogether. I'll give it a little she's got. I love James What was his name? Is he James Doohan? I don't remember.
Sure.
He's funny. But no, I started doing that, and then when I was about 7 or 8 months in, there was a guy who came through, and I won't mention his name here. He's a very talented comedian. He's very funny. He knows how to work a crowd. He knows how to write a joke. He likes to deceive people and pretend to be Scottish when in reality he's not.
We were having that conversation, I think, up here at the pizza place the other night. Yeah.
Yeah, so he likes to pretend when he's not. So he comes through Fort Collins, Denver, picks up a few local guys to feature for him and foot the bill on gas on the road. Because, he'd tell them they could do a feature set and he could only get them a guest set. And he was double booking people in order to manipulate new comedians, which I think is a pretty low move when you can just tell them the deal and they'll come with you anyway.
Yeah.
If you told me, listen, I'll bring you along, I'll get you 5 minutes at this professional show, but you got to cover half the gas, and I'm 6-7 months in, I'm going to pay for half the gas. He didn't have to lie. That's what irritates me about it. That's the only problem I got with the guy. Anyway, he would never break character and never stop being Scottish. And when I met him, I thought he was, even though I was like, I do a better Scottish accent than this guy. But he's really from Scotland, so that makes sense because mine is overemphasized and his is watered down.
Character.
Yeah, and he's real, so it makes sense that he isn't as good at it. No, that was the irony of it all. But he saw my act, and of course he saw that I was a threat to that, and I saw his, and I saw, well, this guy's headline, and I've got 15 minutes. I can't keep doing this. So I had to come up with a new identity for my character. I've been doing it since February. It was now October. And that October for Halloween, I did Snake Plissken, which had an eye patch, Escape from New York. So I had this eye patch laying around. Yeah, Kurt Russell. And I had a few berets from my theater days. And I had this accordion that I had gotten for Christmas the year before because Mom, I wanted to busk with it because I play piano. Yeah. And an accordion is like a portable acoustic piano to a degree.
It's hard to drag a piano out to the corner out in front of the coffee
but accordion,
shop.
I can just pump that sucker out. So I thought, you know what? I'll just learn how to adapt on accordion, learn a few songs, busk, make some money because I really want to keep these gifts God's given me in rotation. But I hadn't touched it for 10 months. So this Scotch guy comes around, and now I can't do Scotland anymore. And I'm sitting at IBM, and I was thinking of this French character, French accent, Francois, Raphael, Edgar, Norbert, Celestine, Herbert, Absalom, Corentin, Clement, Emmanuel, Nathaniel, tell us 4, the initials of which spell French accent. And what he was going to be was he was going to be this right? That's just where he was going to be this bureaucrat in France who had the most boring life and acted like it was a superhero movie, kind of a Walter Mitty thing. That was but before Walter Mitty, I hadn't seen the original, and I saw the remake. I loved the remake. Yeah. But I had that in my brain, and it was very weak. It's a very weak premise. But then, while I was moving, so here's where it all came together. I think God let me bust my keyboard, because while I was moving, I had it leaned against the wall.
Your regular keyboard?
My regular, yeah. Okay. It was leaned against the wall, and the weight of it broke the AC adapter, and I had to send it to an electronic shop so they could take out the screws, solder it back together. It took them about a week. Well, I was moving from my apartment to my folks' summer home to watch my little brother because he was going through high school, and they needed a chaperone. Yeah. And I wasn't going to do it, but then I decided I'd do it because I thought, well, that's the right thing to do. So that was I made a right decision. That's why I was moving, broke the keyboard. Didn't have a keyboard for a month, had to dig out the old accordion. So I'm sitting there in the basement, and I thought, well, what if I did, the accordion's kind of French, and I love Mitch Hedberg, and he had a bass line running on the back of his comedy. I thought, what if I kind of, I thought, what if I did something where I just play a really simple little lick in the background and tell one-liners. And so I started doing that in the basement, and it made me laugh and laugh.
In your basement?
Yeah, not
like a basement coffee shop.
Yeah, no, just by
club.
Myself in the basement. And so I'm driving back and forth from the apartment to the basement, and I'm thinking up one-liners all day, and I'm just laughing and laughing and laughing. And finally, next Monday comes around at Hody's, and I was like, all right, let's try this out.
Yeah.
And so I come up there. And the set is on YouTube. It's on my page. It's my very first French accent. Very first French accent set is somewhere on that channel. And I went up there, and for me, I killed. In retrospect, it wasn't the funniest set I've ever had. It was okay. But for me, at that time, I killed. And I kept doing it. And by January of that year, or of 2011, by January 2011, I got my first paid gig at AF Ray's in Greeley for $20. They paid me. And then that fake Scottish guy, he had told me he'd take me on the road with him. And then he tried to Welsh, but I held him to it. No pun intended on the Welsh there. He tried to Welsh. I held him to it. So he took me on the road for 3 months, and he never broke character, but he wasn't Scottish.
Yeah.
And he's a brilliant guy, and I wish him all the best. He just needs to. I think he gets a kick out of getting away with something. I think it's just as simple as that. But
I've been getting away with that.
You know?
People think I'm a professional podcaster.
it's a
man.
nice feeling, right? Well,
Little do they know. I have no idea what I'm doing.
So anyway, 3 months on the road with that guy from February till almost the end of May, and I had a half-hour set that was really worthwhile. And so from then on, I developed it. I did my first. I headlined for 45 minutes or longer the first time that year. I did it like 10 times, and I was just a little over a year in. So I just kept pushing, and I got on some Tribble runs and some Tribble gigs, and I got on some Charter and some Entertainment Max and a couple other Midwest. So I think I got on 1 or 2 Summit Entertainment gigs, just because I when I was on the road with that guy. He had to send my information to his booker, and so then they started sending me the emails every month, and I responded to a couple of them and sent them a newer video.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ended up really starting to develop the character.
And how'd you hook up? What was the process for AGT, America's Got Talent?
Well, let's see. I started in 2011 in Colorado, and I was doing my act. By 2013, I did a talent show called Colorado You Got Talent, which was a bit of a sham. But I won third in that, and they said that you could apply to AGT.
Gotcha. So like minor leagues.
Yeah.
AGT,
if you will. And basically all they did was gave you the form. You could have just gone. The form and the time of day. Anybody who wanted to go, you didn't win it. It was stupid.
Yeah.
But I went, and I did French accent in front of one person in an echoey banquet hall in a Holiday Inn, and this one person was not impressed. A year later, 2 years later, a producer from AGD called me and asked me to send him a 3-minute set. So I sent him an adult set, not realizing that they couldn't tell that I could do clean.
Yeah.
I just sent them the funniest set I had. I figured if they wanted clean, they'd ask for clean. I just never heard back from them again. 2018, I had been living in L.A. about a year and a half in an RV because I moved out here in 2016, out there in 2016. And I saw in one of the Facebook groups I was in that there was an NBC casting producer at the Comedy Chow open mic at Hooters, which is now at Cabo Wabo on Wednesday. They were doing a special show on Tuesday. Usually they did Wednesday. They said, bring 2 minutes of your network clean material. So I did. I came and I brought 2 minutes of network clean material. And the gal, I think I can say her name because she's always looking for unique acts. If you've got a unique act that's really interesting, she needs them. She wants them. They're casting for season 14 of AGT right now. Her name is Naila K. Durrani. That's Naela. And what she'll do is she'll ask you to send stuff in and look at it, and then she'll say, all right, well, I don't know if this is going to go or not, but I'll send it to my guy. And if so, she can't give it to you.
She's the filter.
Yeah. And she's looking for people. She's always looking, and if she finds a good one, it looks good for her. So it's a win-win situation. It's not. She's not gonna give you advantage if you haven't got anything, but if you got something, it's going to be good for everybody.
What was the experience like doing that?
Well,
and what's the process for that?
So what happened is she had me go through the formalized process after she saw me and liked me, and then I went into a cattle call audition, and they had me, since she had already looked at me, they had me come at a specific time, and I went before one little guy in a room again, just like in Denver in 2013, but this time I knew what to expect. So I came in full in character and never broke character, and he was a little British guy, and I was making fun of the French, and so that was great. That was aces for him.
And nobody likes the French.
Yeah, nobody likes it. So he sent me on to another one where there were a handful of people and cameras in a room, and they had me do my thing again. And again, I didn't break character. Well, I did, but they said, it was like it was something where my character would be more interesting if there was no break in it. Yeah. So. I went and did that, and they said, well, we'll get back to you. And then a few weeks later, they said, we'd like you to do the live audition. And so, it's a reality show, so they need to do some shots and stuff.
Yeah,
and that's just general production.
The filler, the B-roll.
So they had me come in a couple days and do that. And then when I came in to do the AGT thing, there were 400 that got to do it, the live audition, and I think 250 or so make it on the actual show.
Huh.
And then of those 250, I don't know how many make it to round 2, and I know only 12 make the final round. So I was the last one out of 400. the last one of the season. It was near midnight on a Friday at the Pasadena Convention Center. And I'd been there for like 12 hours just waiting, wearing the accordion the whole time because they had cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if they... So I had to stay in character all day.
Yeah.
So, and I had a slight cold, and I didn't want to reveal it because Howie Mandel, I didn't want to sneeze. And he was my only ally. He was the only guy I knew who would like me because he's a comedian. So I wanted to look healthy. And so I was taking, Mucinex. Well, thankfully, he was 50 feet away. I was like, okay, it's not going to be an issue. I just don't sneeze. So I went and I did my set. I waited until midnight because that's when they called me. And I was sloopy. I was tired.
Yeah.
It'd been 12 hours I'd been there wearing that accordion. And I was slightly sick. So when I went and did my set, I wasn't really there.
Yeah.
I was just kind of on autopilot a bit. I was like, well, I'm just going to stay on the stage as long as I can until they kick me off and hope some segment of it makes it on TV so I can claim it as a credit. It's all a win from here. I wasn't expecting to win anything or even pass through. And it's good I had that attitude because here's the reality if you're a stand-up comedian. I don't know about other performers, but if you're a stand-up comedian, the reality is this. America's Got Talent is hecklers with buzzers, and those buzzers are loud. And those girls do not understand comedy. Howie's the only one who gets it, and Simon doesn't like comedians because he thinks he's funnier than they are. And he's a billionaire, so he's got an opinion that he can back up with cash, whether or not he's correct. Yeah. In my opinion, that's all my opinion. So as a comedian, you're going to have 3 hostile judges and 1 who's in your court, and they're going to buzz you before you get done with the premise, sometimes after you do a joke that's a setup for another joke, and it's going to throw you off, or you're going to acknowledge it. If you just act like nothing happened, that's the worst mistake, because it's better to just jump out of your track and say something in the moment than it is to act like something that everybody knows happened didn't happen. You're in comedy. You're part of the moment.
Yeah.
But the other crux of it is, since it's a television show that's got a mainstream G-rated audience and they need to pre-approve everything that's going to go on before they can show it, they really want you to approve what you're going to say beforehand. And I think they don't realize that comedy requires... It requires you to do things differently almost every time. Yeah.
The reading the room.
If somebody makes a snort sound that can be heard in an audience of 1,800 people, you have got to call that out.
Or something falls down. The mic falls down.
Yeah, that's funny. Everybody saw it. We can all relate to it. Just a quick acknowledgement of that. We'll get a great laugh. It'll get everybody on the same page. Yeah. So you've got to do that. So I don't know where they're coming from on that. In my opinion, as a man,
something pops in your head that's funnier than which. Yeah. You don't do that. You don't change the lyric of the song if you're doing, whatever standard. Yeah. Stardust or whatever. You don't do that. But in a joke, something automatically pops in your head that's funny, or you're going to go that path. Yeah.
That's the truth. So, I got 3 buzzers, but the girls turned their mind. They changed their mind because I got the audience involved. I co-opted the audience because the audience was liking me the whole time.
Yeah.
They groaned on 1 or 2 of them, but that was the intention of the joke. It's a groan.
We see that the groan is the success on some of these because they're just
and what it does is it sets you up for a laugh later.
Exactly, especially when you're doing some of the puns you do.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. I know they're ridiculous,
you're
but that's
silly,
the point.
Silly man.
Yeah, Steve Martin was that way. I love Steve Martin.
Exactly.
Love Steve Martin. I'm kind of like Steve Martin and Mitch Hedberg with cocaine, but I don't do. I'm just that's sort of if you would. That's sort of if you were going to describe my act.
You've mentioned Steve's book a couple of times this
Born
weekend.
Standing Up, so good. I read it in one sitting at a Barnes & Noble in Philadelphia in 2012. At the store? Because I was on the road with that guy. I couldn't afford to buy it, and we weren't going to go to a library. He was off getting his willy wet or something, and he left me in the store for 4 hours, so I just sat down on a stool, and I read Born Standing Up cover to cover, and it was... It made me so happy because it revealed a lot of things that I was doing right. It showed me where to avoid going, and it gave me insight into future things I would need.
And you have a version of what he was doing, the mix of very silly things. You mix in some philosophy and some politics, some jokes that technically can go over a lot of people's heads, some of your punchlines. And then the silliness of pop culture and music and the equivalent of an arrow through your head.
Yeah.
With something you wear on your face.
Yes. And that's
what good parallel. I hadn't really made that connection. I
really do love what he did, and I think it's too bad he quit as early as he did. But he's like the Bill Watterson of comedy, in my opinion. Bill Watterson did Calvin and Hobbes for 10 years, and then he knew he had topped himself and cut the string.
Go out on top.
Yeah, and Steve Martin did the same thing, and I I'm not as talented. I started in 2011. It's 2018, so I still got about 2.5 years before I hit that 10-year mark. I don't know. I'd like to do longer. I'd like to make it successful enough to use comedy as a stepping stone into something greater eventually.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Well, that's great. Now, in the meantime, you went to L.A. in 2016?
Yes.
And you are pretty much on the road constantly?
Yeah, I'm not. I get paid about 25% of the total gigs.
Yeah.
And that could be a drink. It could be money. What I do is I write content articles online. So say you've got an insurance company that needs a blog that has to have 5 entries a week. So you got 20 a month in order to hit your search engine optimization, SEO metrics. You want to be in the top SERPs.
Yeah.
I write articles with SEO and backlinks and images, and it's all formatted the right way.
Yeah.
I write about 3,000 words to 4,000 words like that per weekday, and it's been a godsend. It puts the money I need in my pocket so I can travel, so I can eat, so I can live, so I can do this. And then what that allows me to do is I live in an RV, and I basically drive to my gig. I wake up, I shower at the gym, I write articles, I go over my set, I do comedy, mix, repeat, travel.
And that writing, those contracts you have, those gigs that you have with the keyboard, you can do anywhere.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, because the writing is I just get emails when they tell me I have an assignment. There's a board you can go. They've got a website, some of them, but some are different. I've got a handful of clients that have been sending me steady work since 2016, and I've been doing it 3 years. Before that, I had to fight other writers on the job board.
When you say the job boards, because there's a couple that I'm on, that I haven't really utilized. Friends have recommended. I'm trying to think.
Textbroker.com.
Yeah, Textbroker. That's
the big one. That one you can just jump in and start making money on that one. You really can. It'll take you a couple weeks to get in the system. Then once you have access to the board, just follow the instructions, figure out what works and what doesn't, and then get a process. And you can make $500 a week right out the gate. It's going to be less than 40 hours.
Nice.
If you just got to figure out a process. The one that's given me the most is ZERYS.com, Zeris.com. Yeah. And Zeris is different. You don't have a job board anymore. They have an auditions board.
Yeah.
So clients will put up prospective job opportunities. You write an article. If they like you, they take you. If they don't, you don't get paid, and that article was a waste of your time.
Yeah.
So that irritates me because before you had a jobs board, and now you got it. But on the flip side, I've got 3 or 4 clients that make it so I can always make my nut every month,
Now, anybody out there that's looking to utilize you, do they got to go through those boards? Can they contact you direct?
You can contact me at clarkstaplesbennett@gmail.com.
clarkstaplesbennett@gmail.com.
That's correct. And I charge minimum 3 cents a word, and I do have quick turnaround. I want to have complete instructions because sometimes a client will revise and revise and revise and revise, and then if it takes me 3 hours to write a 600-word article, that's $18. That's $6 an hour. If it takes me 30 minutes, that's $36 an hour.
Yeah.
And so
get it right the first time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you give me instructions that I can't get right the first time, then I charge you for revisions. Because I have to. I have to, otherwise there's other articles I could be making money on.
Exactly.
So as long as I can get good instructions, I can turn it around for you in very quickly.
Nice.
And I've written over 2 million words that are published under a pseudonym of the company that I was writing for.
Yeah.
And it's underwritten my whole thing for the last 3 years. It's been a godsend. But
very nice.
I got to have good instructions.
Very nice. Now, before we break, because we're about showtime here.
Yep.
Again, tell everybody where they can find you, social media, web, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you got. Tell them where they can find you.
I'm going to do it as quick as I can. Kevin.Bennett.969 on Instagram. I am Kevin Bennett on Facebook. I'm also French Accent on Facebook. On Twitter, I'm French Accent at PianoMan69. YouTube, my YouTube page is Kevin Bennett. If you Google Kevin Bennett AGT or America's Got Talent, You'll find in the sidebar about a 39-minute video that's on my page. Look for the page of Kevin Bennett. You'll find me. I have an album out called Weather Local. It's just some trippy piano music with some vocals that are probably over the top and not too good, but I like it. Listen to it drunk or high. I'm just kidding. Anyway, it's called Weather Local. You can find that on any internet dingus you want. Between Dystopias is on my SoundCloud, which is under the name Regimented Cacophony. My novel is Amphibian. It's a sci-fi space thing like Blade Runner meets some comedy. The unavailable novel is The Thief and the Sacrifice. I'm currently looking for another publisher on that. The initial one folded. Let's see. Outrage TV has some sketch comedy that I'm on that's a little edgy. That's also on YouTube. And I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't. Oh, I was on America's Got Talent. I was also on It Takes a Church Season 2, Episode 2, and I was on the first week of October 2016, Kill Tony. And,
Nice.
I've got a bunch of little videos and pictures all over the net.
And soon you will have some video and some audio that was captured right here.
Hot diggity. Thank you.
Rick Bronson's House of Comedy in Phoenix, Arizona, where we spent the weekend with French accent as well as Gene Moore. Greg Freiler sat in for a little bit.
That's what his name was. Greg, sorry I missed you on that Facebook update. I couldn't remember your name.
And my buddy over there, Justin Tejan, Phoenix-based comic, and of course your headliner, Mr. Steve Simone, the Good Times Podcast, and AwesomeSteve.com. And man, you know what? Again, I can't say it enough. Thank you to the staff at House of Comedy. AZ,
yes.
Rick Bronson's House of Comedy AZ. They let us take up space and have run of the place and have a blast.
So much fun. Great crowds every night.
It's been a blast. Kevin, thank you so much. I'll have links to all your stuff there in the show notes, and maybe we'll see you up in the Prescott area sometime
I hope
soon.
to,
That's
yeah.
a cool area, some great little spots.
Well, and it's high enough I could probably go over there in the summer if I find shade to park in. Can't do that in Phoenix. Too hot down here.
Thanks again. Have a great set tonight. Have a
Thank
good
you,
show.
sir.
Excellent. I found out how to do a really good Ray Romano impression. Would you like to hear it? All right, good. Yeah, I just do Kermit the Frog doing his impression of Christopher Walken. Deborah, this is how I deliver a punchline.